Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I want to talk about a massive change that I don't really think people understand how big of a change this really is, because what's happening in the game is now going to allow basically the top 1% or the top 0.1% to be able to move and migrate to kingdoms a lot easier. And we're going to talk about all the implications and my thoughts on this change in a bit. So stay tuned, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. So let's first start off by reading what Long Silver posted here on the official Discord just yesterday, a little bit more than 24 hours ago. States, Special Migration Rules Adjustment. Recently, we've received lots of feedback on the mechanics of special migration. To optimize player transfer between servers and improve gaming experience, which technically is just for that select 0.1% in most cases, we will make the following changes to special migration rules. Number 1, at the start of each month, the number of special migrations a realm can accept will increase from 1 to 3, which means that you're going to get 3 of these every month. That is a freaking massive change. It's a 300% increase at that point. The maximum unused migration attempts that can be accumulated will increase from 3 to 10, which basically means at this point that once you hit the start of your 4th month, right, you'll be capped at 10. After these changes take effect, all servers will receive 3 additional special migration attempts as a one-time bonus, which means that at least everyone is going to have 3 extra or free, right? So like, let's say, for example, that you have 3 already stockpiled. Then what's going to end up happening is it really depends, right? Because let's say, for example, that you want to be able to really take advantage of a change like this. And let's say that your migration will be opening up sometime after the new year, right? Or if your migration window is, or sorry, not the new year, but the new month. I guess technically it is the new year as well. But let's say that your migration window is either going to open after January 1st, or even if it opens before January 1st, it'll run through and past January 1st. This means that you kind of have this unique opportunity to kind of get the first come, first served of players who are looking to migrate out, and they're stronger to those particular kingdoms, because you could have essentially, if I understand this right, you could maybe have up to 9, right? Because if you're stockpiled at 3 already, you're going to get the bump for 3 additional spots, which means that puts you at 6. And then if you end up going into the new month with your migration window opening after or throughout, then you're going to be at 9. And so you have some kingdoms that could take advantage of this and kind of get like the first pick, first dibs, if you will, on some of these players. However, let me talk about what I think are really some of the major implications here. Number 1 is that in this feedback, they do not clearly address what they really mean by improving the gaming experience. But I will tell you what they mean without them saying it. What this is really addressing, and let's be very clear here, special migration is really for you, because the way that they originally explained it was that if your kingdom was full status, or if you had already used all of your migration quotas, you could still bring in players that were over the cap. This is supposed to work in a way similar to Rise of Kingdoms, Imperium Kingdoms. We used to call these players overcap players. That was kind of a term that I had dubbed, at least that I had used, and I don't know if anyone else uses it, but it was one I liked to say, because essentially you would be able to bring in players over the cap. For those of you who may or may not play in Rise of Kingdoms, right, the Imperium cap used to be 25 mil, and then I believe they increased to 35 mil. I don't know if that's been increased since then, but basically you could not recruit and bring in players that were over that cap, with the exception of being able to use your one request or special migration a month to bring in someone that was over that cap, right? Hence overcap player. And the same way this applies here. So using your special migration accidentally, which we know some people have done in the game, because of the fact that if we go and we look in game, and I'll give you a good example here. Let's say I zoom in on the dragon and we go to the flag. if I click on migration management, you might see some people pop up here. The challenge is that some people think that this area is also for regular migration, or some people got it confused. So imagine you not having a full understanding of how to appropriately use special migration. Because remember, special migration will not count towards the cap. Or sorry, will not count towards your quota, but it will count towards your kingdom activity status. So for example, if we go to rules and we go to special migration, you'll see here, outside of a season migration, you can also bring players whose power exceeds the limit to your realm through special migration. Only the king can approve. Applications have to accept special migration, must fulfill other conditions as well. You get to accept one per each month unused, right? It tells you that they get stocked up. They'll expire 3 days. And so if you hit, right, let's give an example here. Oh, sorry, here, let's go to seasons. So if you had full status, that means that you can't bring anyone else in. However, with the special migration, you are able to bring people in once you are full, or if you have already exhausted your quota. And the quota that you would see per kingdom is, if I go here to pre-war, let's say I click on one of these, you'll see spaces remaining. That's your quota. So if this hits 0 out of 150, but let's say that you're still crowded, you could still use your special migration in, right, to bring someone in. If your kingdom is full and you've only been able to bring in 50 people, right, technically you could still then use your special migration, as long as, again, the people applying meet the requirements and they're able to still come in. However, when we think about what this change and who this change is really addressing, I mean, let's be real. This change is addressing the top players and the strongest players in the game, making it easier for them to move in pairs, to move in groups, to move to other kingdoms, to where more of them can join a kingdom instead of only being limited here and there, right? So it still allows for you to get people in, and it doesn't necessarily apply to the quota, but it will apply to your KVK matchmaking, and it applies to your kingdom status. So basically, if you think about how to maximize something like this month to month, you would essentially want to try to figure out a way where you can thin out, right? Remove the dead weight before each upcoming migration season, and or have players basically kill off dead troops, probably starting with your highest, working the lowest players, and or maybe doing a percentage of troops that everyone has to kill off. Because this is kind of what they do in Rock, right? So if you're an Imperium Kingdom in Rock, I don't know everything they do, but they basically manipulate things if you're an Imperium Kingdom, so that way you can essentially drop out of Imperium Kingdom when migration comes around, so you can bring in more players, right? Remove any dead weight, if that's killing off troops, if it's doing other things that you need to do, and then you will basically bring in as many people as you can. You'll probably more or less go back into Imperium for that KVK season, then you just kind of rinse and repeat and do the same thing over again. And so doing kind of seasonal trimming, which is what we might end up referring to it as, is something that I think that we may end up seeing here in CoD. And I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with it per se. It just kind of is what it is. Would it be nice if there was other things that they could put into the game that maybe didn't make that have to be so routine? I'm sure. Would have to think about it for a minute. But that is most likely what is going to eventually happen, and probably what is already happening to a degree as well, but we'll probably end up seeing, I think, a lot more of it. One of the things that I thought was interesting was them coming out with an announcement. I think they put this in the FAQ somewhere. I just don't know exactly where it is, but they had wrote something up saying that they're adjusting not adjusting, but that the inactivity timers were between, I think, 1 and 90 days or up to 90 days, when originally they said it was 1 to 30 days, so they did make that correction. But, I mean, that kind of sucks to see. And again, I'll talk about what I think they should be doing to address inactivity, and how, if they are kind of worried about people coming back or manipulating that, I do think that there are ways to work around that. And I'll just give you one example here, which is that, like, let's say someone who's been gone for a month, they come back. Well, in order to then count towards your kingdom activity status and to be factored into matchmaking, you have to then play consistently every day maybe with a minimum amount of playtime or a minimum amount of logins, something to that effect, for a week straight, right? Or you have to total 7 days, right, within like a 14 or a 10-day period or whatever it is. If you do something like that, where you say, because again, you have to, like, just take the average time that someone logs in to do their dailies, and, you know, like, even if you're just giving a bare minimum, like, let's say you have to be logged into the game for 30 minutes a day for 7 days straight, or something to that effect, right? That would help out so much before someone who comes back, because right now the way it works is that if you come back after being inactive and after having your kingdom or your city removed from the map, you're immediately back. And your stats and everything immediately starts counting towards that. What I think they need to do, and again, I'll dive more into this probably in a separate video, is they need to make it so that way you have to meet a certain threshold in order to then be factored, in order for your city and your stats to be factored into the kingdom. And like I said, I think doing something like where you have to play for either a week straight, or you have to play for 7 days within like a 10-day or a 14-day period for a minimum amount of time, and it could be a bare minimum, right? Like I said, take kind of like a median average from players on how much time are they usually in, and then just go with that, right? And I think doing something like that will help out a lot, because some people might just come back to check in, and if you don't meet that, then you basically go right back to being inactive and you have to restart it all over again, because you don't want people who are just going to come back to kind of mess around with your kingdom or to not be kind of fully recommitted again. You want players to be active and to be actually contributing, and I just really believe that the game systems should be doing things to encourage, and more importantly, to take care of the players that are there. And sadly, I just don't think the system is the best that it can be yet. However, without getting too far off on a tangent, my view on this is that, yeah, is it gonna make big players and stronger players and kind of catering more to that 1%? And like I said, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. It's just that's really what this change is directed at. It's mostly directed at the strong top 1% players who are now going to have an easier time moving out of a kingdom they're in and moving to other kingdoms. And you can argue that it is somewhat of an important change, especially if you want big and top and strong players to keep spending money on the game, which also helps to keep the game alive and keep it running, right? It is just kind of a circle of life, if I'm taking a quote from The Lion King here, kind of ether or approach. And it is what it is. So from there, again, even if it is massive of a change, because it really is, do I think that it is going to help things out in the long run? I mean, we'll see, right? In most cases, you're not seeing kingdoms that are max filling out that 150 cap at the moment, right? You'll see some here and there, but it's not as though every single kingdom is getting 150 new players to come in. And so, you know, you do need ways to help, I think, some of the bigger players be able to move, especially if some of them are friends, they want to go to places, and they don't want to have to wait for so long. On the other side, this is one of those things where, like, let's say you are able to bring in 150 people every season, and then on top of that, you're bringing in 3 people a month, right? Or however many that you have stockpiled at that point, if it's probably 3 to 6 on average that you're going to be able to bring in each migration season, and those people are going to be able to not count towards the quota, but will only kind of push you further into a full status, or maybe will push you into full status at that point. We'll have to see how that change factors in. Will it be something where, because you have to think about it like this, if those big players are coming in, are they going to stay active long enough, and are you going to not have as much player drop off in that period where the big players that have joined will kind of outweigh the people that have dropped off, or like to a point where you'll consistently stay full, or you'll have to do other things to help manipulate and kind of lower the cap so you can bring in more people on that next migration season? Will you be able to kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing the top end of what kingdom power is, right, beyond what the full status? Because hitting full status is probably basically around 22.5 billion, 23 billion, if you want to kind of average it there, from data that we've looked at and from what I've pulled. And if you remember, right, the strongest that a kingdom has been, I think, was around 37 billion or something to that effect, right? With TFS when they were in 40, when they were in 23, right? Back then. But we haven't really seen anyone exceed that. Thankfully, all signs have kind of been pointing to lower top end kingdom power, where things are aligning a little bit more. Will this change have major impacts? We'll see. I would love to hear what you guys think on it. Is it something that you think can get out of hand? Do you think no, it's not going to get out of hand? It's not as big of a deal as maybe some people might be making it out to be, and it's really going to help kind of keep those top players, those top strong players engaged, to where maybe they don't feel like their choices are limited, or because now they'll be able to have more options on kingdoms that they can move to, right? So again, where do you land on that? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.